Besides maybe the sniper builders, gas gun builders seem to always have the longest and most extensive parts lists, so I can already tell that this video is going to take forever to narrate over, but with gas guns come some of the most interesting builds. Over the past week, I took in over 100 setups from all around the world for yet another Airsoft Top Series episode where I get to show off just a taste of the best that the Airsoft world has to offer. I received pistols like hicapas, 1911s, lots of M4s, a shotgun or two, and a lot of WeTechs, so we should start off the count. This is the top 10 gas gun builds that begins in my state of Texas with Adam Spike of Gas Blowback Central and Gas Blowback Customs for his AKG. With only 2 external modifications, this rifle is very simple, but it does feature a 200R FDE Strike Industries Keymod rail system and an 8R Madbull OSS Supressor to give off a very different look, a $750 look. And I know my judges and I were not the only ones who enjoyed this piece, since KWA themselves featured this build on their Facebook page, inspiring a few builders to copy this same layout. However, next up at number 9 is my favorite build when it does come to aesthetic looks. If you know me at all, you'd know why. From Michigan, it's Alex with his WE Tech M16A1. Immediately, you recognize this iconic appearance. Put together to allow Alex to relive and be a part of US history and teach young players that history, Alex plays with this build to honor those who fought during the Vietnam War. To do this, Alex left the internals alone and focused on attaching a GMP M203 Scarface conversion kit and heat shield. Although this classic piece may have costed $850 US, including the 14 magazines, I'm all for this setup, as this would be the build that I want for myself, but maybe I'm just a bit biased, which is why I'm not allowed to judge the builds myself. But for my final word, I love this classic setup, and I intend to do the same with the GMP M16 one day. Switching things up now from the old school to the modern world, another Alex with this Tokimori Bullpup represents California at the 8th spot. Externally, this KSG, like the other couple builds we just saw, does not feature very much. Its owner only added gearhead muzzle device, a Magpul RVG, and a YTech choke adapter. However, internally, his gas shotgun was Wolverine tapped at the bottom of his gas reservoir, bringing the cost to around $900. Alex did mention that he loves Tokimori guns, but he has a bad reputation for breaking them, hence why he chose the HPA tap a KSG so he could make it more skirmishable. This builder even broke a Tokimori 870 in the span of one day of play, so maybe choosing to do this was worth it in the long run. While I have the chance now, I remember when people wanted the KSG shotgun to be made in Airsoft so badly, but now that you can go and buy one, it's still a rare event to see one out in the wild. But I guess that's just how Airsoft is. Now that we're at number 7, we're going to start seeing some of those long parts lists, and this one comes from a well-established builder that's been featured before on this series a few times. From the UK, it's the 3rd Alex in a row, I'm not even joking, with his heavily modified WE 7-inch Dragon hicapa. Might as well call this the countdown of the Alexes. Whenever a countdown has anything to do with gas guns or pistols, Alex floods the submission pulls with awesome setups, and this one is no exception, with its large Osprey suppressor, folding grip, Cmore red dot 90-degree mount, TM barrel rail mount, battlelink stock, and that custom 3D printed carbine kit. But what internal modifications are there inside? Well, we have a 12-inch Angry Gun 6.01 Type 4 inner barrel, a maple leaf bucking, a maple leaf eye key. No, I have no idea what that is. A Nineball gas router, a UAC high flow valve and rocket valve, and an AW loading nozzle to get this carbine shooting at 410 feet per second with a .25 gram BB. And all this can be had for $620 US. So much for telling this builder that he couldn't make this piece, because now it's featured on the Airsoft Top Series, and yet Alex says it's a cheap and easy pistol to replace. Just what kind of job do you have, Alex? Anyhow, I always enjoy when this builder turns in for these countdowns, and I hope to see more from him in the future. And here are just a few more examples of his awesome pieces of work. I know this is a bit irrelevant to some people, but normally it takes me about 4 days to get a top 10 finished after I get all the information from the featured builders who take up spots. But I only have 2 days to make this show before I leave to Dallas for a Rammstein concert. But hey, after just 1 day, I'm already here at number 6, which is held by a previous top spot holder. This is Richard of the UK, who's very proud to show off this WE M14. Once upon a time, I actually owned a WE M14, and after it exploded in my face, after just a week of owning it, I never messed with a WE rifle ever again. So you're gonna have to really impress me with this one, Richard. Richard says that this rifle is extremely heavy at 9 kilograms or 19 pounds, but this doesn't prevent him from using it as his main CQB gun. Excuse me? That's not a joke, that's a direct quote from Richard. Okay, so let's see what makes up that weight. The normal WE-M14 already weighs like 8 to 9 pounds, but the rest of that weight comes from the APS Rhino fiber optics flip-up sights, the Magpul RVG, a Magpul MS3 Sling, a Vector Optics holographic sight, a speeder soft sight shield, a Real Steel Black Feather LSP full-length top rail, a Real Steel Archangel M1A stock, OD rail covers, a 500 lumen flashlight, G&G M14 front sight and threaded adapter, and an Ace One Arms Osprey suppressor. As for Richard's pricey internals, he made sure to make good use of the M14's long barrel by adding a 500mm 6.01 RE Tech inner barrel, a Firefly soft hop bucking, a custom-made flat hop-up arm, and he shimmed the hop unit wheel to prevent the hop from backing off. Next, the list includes a RE Tech 150% summer recoil spring, an RE Tech steel recoil bar, an RE Tech steel trigger unit, and Richard's custom home-casted aluminum inner-outer barrel spacers. And to finish the mods, Richard removed the full auto function from this WE to make it a semi-auto rifle only. Now this rifle is powered by either a green gas 20 round magazine or a homemade HPA drum magazine made using a 1500 round Angel Customs Firestorm flash mag. Which brings the total of this WE-M14 to $2,000. But it was raised by dieting from junk food and from sold gear that Richard had no use for. I think that would be a first in the Airsoft Top Series. A gun paid for by a good diet. I mean, if you're going to spend $2 grand on an airsoft gun, at least make it justifiable. Now we're at the number 5 spot that's held by another WE rifle. This time it's a bullpup with a few lovely features. This is Stein Gas Blowback's SRU converted Scar L. Sent in from Belgium, which is fitting for an FN style replica, this piece looks brilliant and encompasses that sci-fi look even more with that Real Steel Midwest Industries Scar extension rail and Ares SL9 rail up top. And I'm loving the thought of how the recoil impulse is probably like. But the real kicker about the Scar is that it can take AEG magazines and run on HPA without being a Daytona gun or a TNK gun. This can happen because the Elion Airsoft kit inside, but the SRU bullpup kit did affect the full auto function, causing it to be unusable altogether. Some modifications were done to the Elion kit for better airflow, and the heavyweight bulk carrier consists of an RE Tech steel top carrier, an Angry Gun Scar H lower carrier, and a standard nozzle with FG discs. And the rest of the $1,450 budget went towards an Angry Gun recoil spring, an RE Tech 6.01 370mm inner barrel, and a Maple Leaf 75-degree bucking, and the modded trigger housing and the other RE Tech trigger components all inside. I can't remember if I've already showcased an SRU conversion kit yet, but if they all can step up like Stein's did, then I'd love to have more be a part of the submission pools. But let me know in the comments of what you think about bullpup guns, because that will be the theme for the next countdown. Speaking of bullpups and conversions, I have 2 more to talk about, and this one comes from the US, and no shock, it's another WE. Check out this SVD SVU conversion from Noah of Minnesota. Funny enough, I've seen a hand-converted SVD to SVU once before, and then this one makes it 2, even though there's an AEG model out there already. But if you think about it, a gas version is just leagues above the electric version. I'm just going to read this out as Noah wrote it, as he wrote his own script. Externally, I'm using a Matrix PSO scope, a Russian Surplus SVD front handguard, but I hand-carved the grip and cheek rest. I have a Russian Surplus SVD sling, an Angel Customs muzzle brake, and of course I made it a bullpup. Internal mods are a Maple Leaf Autobot 75-degree hop-up bucking, a Maple Leaf concave hop-up nub, a Maple Leaf 6.02 455mm inner barrel, and a Hephaestus steel CNC hammer assembly. It did cost $720 for the final product, but it's special because it's one of a kind. I spent a year working on it, trying to make it as accurate as I could to the real thing, while still making it functionable. It's been a labor of love, and I want everyone to appreciate it. Well, you got just that, because I really appreciate this piece, and of course all the upgrades you put into it, and the gun itself sounds really solid in the clip that you sent me. I love these hard conversions because they're really difficult to put together sometimes, but you get just something that no one else really has. But just like how there was 3 Alexes in a row, there's going to be 3 bullpups in a row on this countdown, because the UK is back again with Ivan and his WE L85A2. But that's not an L85A2. Well, look closely at the mixed ICS parts that made this the 4th gas L86 LSW on Earth. Ivan swapped out the butt pad, rear grip, foregrip assembly, outer barrel, and flash hider from all ICS parts. This kind of work did come with some teaching though, because his friend Tor had to show him how to do it, and he owns a 3rd gas blowback L86 out there. Ivan went on to add his own WE SUSAT and his own design custom one-off 3D printed stainless steel ambi magazine releases, and a Reaper Airsoft HPA electric feed 900 round magazine, so in a sense this is a gas blowback support weapon now. 3D printed parts were a bit hard to work with when it came to this build, but a printed barrel front mount, rear mount, and securing plate were created to allow Ivan to go back and forth between his old L85 parts and this L86 layout. As for the rest of the internals, Ivan finished up this build with all RA Tech parts, except for maybe the valve knocker and the bolt impact washers, costing him about $1,000. He said it probably would be best to not give out the full amount. I like this setup for being a gas L86, but this build sparked with the judges for its 3D printed parts, its high capacity HPA tap magazine, its extreme rarity, and for the ease of swapping between two different layouts. Just when you thought an improved WE L85 was good enough, you get to have an L86 LSW as well. Maybe try the same thing with a GHK AUG and make an H-bar? Maybe? That is if you can find the parts for that. There's only 2 builders left to show off, and they come from opposite sides of the country, the United States. And no, they don't have the same name, and they didn't make the count for a bullpup. After all, Taylor of California is here for his heavily priced VFC HK417. Right away I'm going to tell you guys that this build costed Taylor $3,300, and probably even more. This is due to the many real steel parts he included, kind of like how Philip from long ago took the crown for the most expensive airsoft build we ever showcased here at $10,500. These real parts include a real G28 stock, a CIM tactical MR762 M-lock rail, K&S anti-roll pins, and a real steel KAC trigger guard. The rest of the externals that can be seen are Harris Engineering bipod modified for Taylor's M-lock rail, a homemade MR762 bolt catch shelf, a Z-part 16-inch steel outer barrel, a Z-part steel barrel nut, a Magpul MIAD 1.1, a VFC G28 flash hider, an RWA 2.5 through 10 by 28 first focal plane scope, a QD 30mm scope mount, and a 10MW green target laser wired inside of the PEC 15 battery box. Unlike Philip's 10K build, Taylor made a few internal upgrades like an RA Tech steel inner barrel, a maple leaf 70-degree bucking, stainless steel inserts for all threaded holes in the hop-up, a brass hop-up tensioner plate, a real steel DPMS trigger sear and 90-degree selector, and a Hephaestus aluminum buffer. All these real parts and accuracy determining altercations took months to hunt down like any extensive build would, but the hard work from its owner, gunsmiths, and other machine shops is what garnered this piece such a high spot on this show. And despite all of this rifle is used as a test bed for what will fail and what can be done to make sure that part never fails again, so other 417 builders know what they should throw in their builds. From the beginning, this was a sacrificial lamb, but now it's a solid piece that could go toe-to-toe with quite a few other ones out there in the world. Okay, it's time for the number 1 spot from the other side of the United States, nestled in New York, presenting Emmanuel and his half airsoft, half real steel WE M4. Now, what do I mean by half airsoft, half real steel? Well, as you might assume, this build took quite a bit of handiwork and strange parts to put together, like a real and unmodified Colt upper receiver. The exterior also features a custom-made outer barrel and sight assembly, a real A2 barrel nut, and real M231 handguard panels. The real firearms parts might have been a struggle to properly fit, but more work went into modifying the magazine well so it could accept completely different magazines. Emmanuel had to make a redesigned extended valve striker and a new machine aluminum magazine well made from a solid block of aluminum. Then he extended the feedway before machining an aluminum loading nozzle and modifying the hop-up chamber to fit that new nozzle. Since a lot of these parts were milled by hand, cost couldn't really be determined for this build, but that shouldn't affect the hard work you would expect from handcrafting parts to go inside an airsoft gun wrapped in a Colt receiver. This kind of work took hundreds of hours spread out amongst a year, so maybe you'd understand why it's at the top spot. And being the only gas blowback 9mm AR-15 replica that's been around since maybe the classic airsoft guns with inline tanks inside their bodies just adds another nail into that coffin. But what do you think? Did the right gun get the top spot, or did you see something else that you think deserved that spot? Let me know in the comments down below because the judges would love to see those comments. Or just tell me if you like this show or not. And remember that parts list will be in the description down below if you're looking for a part 2 on a build that you saw here today. Next I have a bullpup show and maybe a 7.62 show to do. And then I have gameplay to film at High Ground Airsoft in Spring, Texas, so I hope you enjoy that. But now I need to pack up for my Dallas trip because I leave in like 9 hours, so I have to go. But until that next video drops from the city of San Antonio, this has been Scott Holmbeck, and I will be sure to see you all next time. 3D printed parts were a bit hard to work with when it came to this build, but a printed barrel front mount, rear mount, and securing plate were created to allow Ivan to go back and forth between... There we go. I just broke all my keys because I couldn't say that piece right.